Brains, Building Hearts. Welcome, everybody. To my left, we got Chris McAllister. Welcome, Chris. And then we got Mr. Brett Burchard. And he is here. He's got a big smile on his face, ready to rock and roll. Today we're talking about breaking brains, building hearts, leveraging leadership to enrich your life, enrich the lives of others, showing up so you can elevate people to be the best that they can be, and to kind of find the strength to operate at the edge of your abilities and welcome that opportunity when it's thrust upon you, and maybe even create the opportunity for you to engage and to make that happen for yourself. And before we kicked off, Chris was sharing something interesting with us. So Chris, I'm going to kick it back to you, man. What was on your mind?
Well, and this is episode 5, isn't it? With the restart. So wow. That's crazy. As I have counted, but I could be wrong. No. So and I love how this is like this real-time thing. One of the things that Jimmy and I connected on was the way that you transform somebody. It doesn't have to be subjective. It can be objective. It's step by step. It's a process with the WINS model, with the site shift circle, boom. But what was missing was like team alignment, role fit from that objective reality. Mm-hmm. And, we have that now through the partnership that Jimmy's formed that we're a part of, with this measurement tool. It's so amazing. So what I'm coming from right now is a meeting with Mark, Jimmy, where we were I was just blistering him with my questions. And I'm curious. I asked him how it went. It went great. It went great. But I'll let him say it in his words. But what it's done is it's taken, if my vision was as full as I knew it to be 6 or 7 months ago. And then everything that's changed in the world took my vision and did this. Mm-hmm. But what's happened recently, and there's 2 reasons for it. I've been swirling in a world of new knowledge, expanding my own consciousness, growing like crazy. It's been a deep dive. I break my brain like crazy. And understanding the potential we have to transform not just individuals, but organizations. I'm not being dramatic, man. My vision feels like this. Like everything is swirling into a focus. So, whatever.
Back in the cave?
I'm constantly, I think for me, a rhythm is like in the cave a lot or out with people a lot. And then there's another rhythm where I'm like in the cave, out with people, in the cave, out with people. And that's the little bit of the way that it's felt lately. But then I run to stay sane and mess up as a parent and all the realities of lives.
Mess up as a parent reminds you you're human, right?
Oh, man, I messed up last night, too. One of my kids is like, I love her so much, but just had asked a question so many times.
Ooh.
And it was her anxiety, and I didn't handle it horribly. I didn't handle it great. I tried to shut it down and control it a little bit. Like, I don't like it when I do that. So I'm always a mix of many things. But Brett was in Mexico this weekend, so he's probably got way more interesting stuff to talk about.
Spent the weekend in Mexico. Yeah. I played in a sand volleyball tournament on Saturday. So she introduced me to sand volleyball when we first met. And my dad tells me, he makes fun of me all the time. He's like, yeah, I bet you really like volleyball, don't you? I was only playing it to spend time with her. But it's actually a super fun game, and gave me like a new competitive outlet since I wasn't playing basketball competitively anymore. So then started playing, and it took me like 4 years, but there's this big tournament in Mexico. It happens twice a year, spring and fall. And it took me like 4 years to get on the team, but I finally made it due to an injury for another player. But I was ready and stepped right in.
Just like Tom Brady, man.
Yeah. Got to be ready to go when your number's called. So
How'd you guys do?
We did fine. We ended about like middle of the pack. We're kind of they got like 5 different levels. It's A players who are like, A players or some borderline A pros, and then they have B major, B minor, and then like C and rec. And our group is like right in this middle space of B major, B minor. We can go to B minor and usually win, but B major, we're sitting like middle of the pack and need some things to go well for us to win it. But played 9 matches, went like 5-4, and it's just crazy conditions. And we were on the beach in Mexico Saturday. Winds are swirling like 20 mile an hour, and trying to control the ball and play in the conditions was crazy. But it was a lot of fun. So.
That's awesome. A metaphor and an analogy for life, playing in whatever the conditions are.
Whatever the conditions, you got to figure it out. Actually, the bad conditions tend to help our team because our fundamentals are really strong. The passing and ball control is really good. And so we can handle some of those things. And, it's good enough that we can just kind of get it over. The teams who need the perfect conditions, they bump, pass, set, and then kill it. And they can get like perfect sets with just hammer kills, and you can't defend it. But in the bad conditions, they're kind of sloppy and they're just getting the ball over. Well, our fundamentals are strong enough that we can at least keep the ball alive and we don't have to crush it and still score points. So the bad conditions actually favor us a little bit.
I feel like we're getting an early preview to Brett's email to his email list this week, that it's going to be. I'm curious if you have any memories, like coming back to you, Jimmy. I have one. My highest moment of athletic prowess and performance. I was in a fraternity basketball league. We had an A league and a B league. I was in the B league. And I just happened to have one moment, one night. Can life give me this moment? And it did, where every 3-pointer I shot for like a set amount of time, nailed it. It was awesome. Like, it was such a flow state, a zone, if you will. The next day, I remember walking across campus and a few guys shouting my name, about how on fire I was. So that's my athletic glory. I gotta memorialize that somewhere. It'll never live anywhere.
The problem with those moments is you have to like shut them down, because now everyone thinks you're this stud player, and now forever,
right?
Like you have to, but you're like, no, I really wasn't. I just like caught in the moment, and I don't know how to replicate it.
Right.
So I can never play again.
Yeah, exactly. You see, I think people get those kind of moments in their career and their leadership, and it's like, I got to get away from the potential of this crashing and burning. And then some people just ride it all the way down. Yeah. I did ride it all the way down.
I remember I'm sorry, I want to hear yours too, Jimmy. But I remember in middle school, I played on a team, like the summer basketball team, and our coach had this crazy idea. He's going to have everyone on the team is going to take 10 shots, and we're all going to watch him shoot and see where his misses come off the rim. So now we'll be a better rebounding team, right? Because we know every time he shoots, it's going to be long, it's going to come off hard, which this is like typical middle school rec league coaching. Like, it's not, you would never do this, but this is what we did. And so it was my turn to shoot, and I made all 10 shots. And they said, all right, well, if Brett shoots, everyone's run back on defense. I wasn't that good of a shooter at the time, but man, I hit every single shot, and now my confidence was like sky high for that little summer season, and ended up like being the go-to shooter on the team, which was never my role on any team I ever played on. But yeah, one of those moments where you just like, you catch fire, you catch flow, but now you gotta kind of run away from it because it's not true.
Yeah, right.
How do I replicate that?
Minimize it.
This is like the Peter principle in a lot of ways at work. Like, you did one good thing right, and they're like, give him a promotion. Let her do that all the time. And she just happened to get it, or he just happened to get it right that one time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
What are your glory days, Jimmy?
That's funny. I mean, I'm still looking. I'm still waiting for my glory days. My kids, as my kids are 15 and almost 20, my two girls, and so I say that just because to let you know I've gone through this kind of process of experiencing their trials and errors around sports and other kinds of extracurricular activities at school. And so I when I was in high school, I did everything. I played football, I wrestled, I ran track, I did pole vaulting, I was in the diving team. I mean, I joined the diving team because they ran an announcement that said they need a diver, right? I mean, so I just was trying stuff. And I remember a ton of humbling experiences. That's really all I remember. I remember getting knocked on my ass in football by a kid that was younger than me and like 3 foot taller. I remember diving and doing a half gainer where you go out and then you put your arms out and kind of bend backwards and go back toward the
I can tell
the board, and I can still feel the board brushing my nose as I went past it. As I came out of the water, everybody was kind of like looking for the blood and kind of like wincing. So I remember I have all those memories. So I remember them. I guess what I would say is they were just really humbling, and I was probably the most arrogant guy you'd ever want to meet in high school. So those were humbling experiences, but I just kept going after them for some reason. I don't know why. I never became an expert in any one thing. I just kept bouncing.
I know why.
Experience.
It's so obvious, but I mean, just because we've talked about it before, I mean, it's I'm looking for worth. Where do I kill it? So I look for worth, not to take us there, to take us too deep, but in case that's helpful. And if that feels like it sums it up or is too simplistic or judgmental,
no, I was
call me on that.
Yeah,
live on this. Yeah. I would say this: do you tell those stories in your academy?
No.
Why the heck not? I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's so much interesting material. It makes you so 3D. It makes you like to tell.
I have more humbling. I have lots of humbling stories, my brother.
Yeah, let's just do all the humbling stories.
No, that's good.
Today.
No, I totally.
Jimmy. This is great.
I totally get that. So yeah, and that's a really good point, though. I mean, this idea of connecting. So I always was very comfortable telling my kids what a insecure guy I was. But in the moment, I remember my insecurity manifesting itself as me being a bully. I was an incredible bully in elementary school, and I was incredibly insecure, and that insecurity didn't go away. So, but I never thought of the insecurity as expressing itself as, from a sports perspective, looking for worth, looking for value. I always just thought it was really interesting that I was willing to go through the pain of starting new sports all the time. I mean, when I was on the diving team, I was in a little Speedo. I was a little wimpy little dude in a Speedo, man. I would never get in front of a whole school in a Speedo, but I did on the diving board. Why would I do that? So looking for worth. I mean, maybe a human being would go to great lengths, to push themselves to feel that moment of worth, that moment of value.
Welcome to episode 71 of Coaching Live and On Air. No, I'm kidding. Props for you for the courage to see that and own it even on air like that. But the point for me is, I just think that those are powerful things that you can talk about, and those kind of moments, we all have them. We've all learned from them. My most painful one, that was directly called out and confronted professionally at like age 28. I had a coach and I was getting a major promotion. And I still remember sitting at a restaurant with him, and he looked at me. He was like, "Chris, you're not ready." And I was like, "I am ready." Mm-hmm. And guess what? At 42, he was so right. I wasn't ready. I made a major error, cost the organization a ton. Massive learning point for me. The paradoxical thing is, if I would have sat there and said back to him, you're right. Tell me how I'm not ready. Not that I was giving him full agency, but he was a high impact coach, amazing person. If I would have said to him, you're right, tell me I'm not ready, paradoxically, that would have made me ready, because he could have said this, this, and this. But instead, I'm ready. And then I go have this spectacular failure because I didn't appreciate that the vision is the people, that you don't mess with momentum. You redirect it and multiply it, but you don't shut it down. And you're never going to win a perception battle. So don't try. I know all those deeply now. I mean, last night or 2 days ago in the kitchen, my wife said something to me. She was like, well, lately you've been, and I was like, I don't necessarily agree with that, but there's no point in trying to change that rationally. I just need to do better to calibrate a more effective perception. So maybe my coach would go, Chris, you're learning a little bit. You're learning a little bit. So that's a big failure, man. I mean, I really did hurt a lot of people. I hurt an organization, not exaggerating to say I hurt hundreds of people.
So how did you process that and kind of work through it and bounce back from it?
Interestingly enough, when I faced that crossroads again with another organization, I did lead through it well, because I appreciated those three things: that the vision is the people. If it's helping people grow and develop, that's the key. The vision is never more important than the people. And if you're trying to take the organization somewhere that the people aren't ready to go or don't want to go, you're going to do violence to that organization, which is why I stepped away from the public leadership role I was in before I did SiteShift full time. Because here we were, I was going here and changing, and for me to take them with me, it would have been violent. And so, you gotta know when to recreate the organization or step away. I think secondly, the way I bounced back from it was after learning that the vision is the people, learning to appreciate momentum and how hard it is to get, and how valuable it is, and how you nurture it and take care of it. And I was just given too much opportunity and resources in my 20s, mid to late 20s. I didn't realize all the blood you got to spill to get all that, right? And that's why I had a chat yesterday with somebody, and they were like, I'm just not getting to this point fast enough. And I'm like, well, that's because you're not ready to sustain that vision. You can't sustain the vision until you appreciate all the shit it takes to get it. And then I think the third, don't fight perception battles. You say reality is this, reality is this.
Right.
You say reality is this, you are correct. What if we just moved 1 degree over?
Yeah.
Not gaslighting, doing it openly in a way that empowers people to grow and learn. So ultimately, it was my own personal journey of transformation to know who I am more than the organization, that my identity is not wrapped up in how many people I'm leading. But those were the three manifestations of that deep lesson.
Yeah. This sounds like, Brett, this sounds like a conversation around mindfulness versus mindset.
Yeah. Taking the mindset to push yourself forward. I'm interested hearing you guys talk about, your ways of just like, go do it. Jimmy, just jump in and try everything. Chris, and say, you're not ready. And you say, yeah, I'm ready. Let's go for it. And where my natural bent is just the opposite of, Jimmy, where you were fine to just stand in front of the school wearing a Speedo. I was on the swim team before high school. And, I had 2 layers of pants and sweats over my Speedo. I didn't take them off until the moment we got on the blocks to go in. And then as soon as the race was over, my shorts and pants and sweatshirt are right back on. Like, Chris, I would love to have someone just come and say, you're not ready, and here's why, bang, 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 bang.
Right.
But that stuff never happened for me. And it was like, there was a hesitation to get started or to try new things or to jump out there. I told the story at one point about my first time as a head coach and wanting an old wise man to tell me why I wasn't going to work, or I needed to go do it, try and fail. And so the old wise man was never going to come for me. So I had to go do it. But just the different, perspective. Sometimes we just jump out there and go too fast. Sometimes we move a little too slow or too hesitant, but two different approaches there.
Yeah, I remember. It's funny, Brett. I remember as a kid, longing for that wisdom, for someone just to, how come there wasn't somebody there for me to warn me, to educate me, to inform me, just about these things. And some of the most pivotal pieces of feedback I got from adults as a young person was unsolicited feedback. Like they would look at me and just in a moment say, so my dad would introduce me. This is my son, Jimmy. And the guy would look at me and say, "Why are you so serious?" And so it's like, and those kinds of moments stuck with me. So I kind of, decided that wise person didn't show up because that I was looking for, because it just wasn't what I needed, right? I needed to have this wish and desire unfulfilled so I could find it in myself, find the curiosity to create the wisdom myself. But then on the other hand, there were those unsolicited kind of like comments that also were the wise person showing up maybe in a different way than I anticipated. So
that's what I was hearing, Jimmy, is that the wise person was showing up. It was just in disguise, or it was in yourself and your own experiences.
Yeah, they just weren't showing up the way I wanted. I wanted that, like that. I wanted the Hallmark, card where they put their arm around you and kind of like give you the wisdom that changes your life in like in a 30-minute sitcom. You go from hell to heaven in 30 minutes. Life is, I wanted that, right? I imagined that was what it was like. So I think it just, my stubbornness, made me kind of wait for that for too long. But it was, it's good.
That's something, Chris, you've really helped me tune into recently, is like paying attention to those little comments or the feedback you get from other people, that is that wisdom you're looking for. It's the comedian paying attention to the laughs that the audience gives. Like they tell you what's funny. Same as pay attention to the feedback that people say about you offhandedly, or that they use to describe you, or the things that bother you or irritate you or just kind of sit with you for too long. I remember in college, I had a professor. We were kind of in a group committee meeting or something, and a professor introduced me to the group. And the way she introduced me has like stuck with me forever. It's the strangest thing. Wow. Like I've never heard someone introduce me like that before, never have again. She knew something about me that I didn't understand. And now the more I've learned about myself and the things that drive me and drive my behaviors and decision making, are like, wow, she saw that way before I ever did. So like paying attention to that little wisdom that's out there that you're receiving, but making sense of it.
Picking up on those clues and signals is huge. And for people listening, even with that coach that I was talking about, how that came about, I was at a leadership event. You go pay and you learn to grow. So you put yourself in places where you're going to learn and grow.
Right.
And that's huge. Like just being a growth oriented person, seeking out growth. I'm 25 years old. I'm at some event, and we broke up into these teams for this event, and it would take a long time to explain it. But point of that is, there was a guy in my team who was, 12, 15, 20 years older. I don't remember now. But point of that is, I heard him talking, and I was like, oh, he knows more than everybody here. Like, not academic intelligence, awareness, leadership, pattern recognition. He's playing a different game. And so I listened to him talk and asked him questions. And then I asked him to help me, right? And then he ended up becoming, a coach for me for a number of years, and was massive. A big insight that I got that was even a part of Sight Shift when I was coming together, and 30 years old and everything broke and I'm trying to rebuild. I had paid to go to this small business school in Austin, Texas, like a multi-day event. Again, I'm getting in places that people show up like that, right? And this psychologist gets up to speak for a little bit at this event, and he was in Austin, and there was a stuck point I felt like in my and my wife's relationship, not necessarily bad, just stuck. As I heard him talk, it just knew it. I was like, he's got the answer. I got to go find that answer, and he'll have it. And so I approached him afterward, and I just asked him, hey, would you do meetings by phone? I live in Columbus, Ohio. We had just moved here. And he was like, sure. So we did like 6 or 7 meetings. And those were like really pivotal moments for me. And I think what happens for people is we're skeptical at the wrong time, and we're too believing at the wrong time. Like if we could, most people need to flip their skepticism and their, naive believability. You need to have a naive believability that what you need is showing up. And if there are people that are talking and sound like they know that they can help you and they know something about what you're facing, believe that they can. Invest in the fact that you can get help. And it's crazy how it happens, right? And then so oftentimes we're not picking apart the things that we need to be more skeptical about. The promises people make to us, whatever, I could go on and on. And so I think for people watching or listening, it's just like, man, there are resources that are showing up, and having the courage to step into them, that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, fun stuff. Jimmy, what for you would you look back at and go, here was a big failure moment for me?
Just one.
Or any of, but yeah, something that comes to mind that's like.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I talk a lot about is it's really interesting because when I introduce myself now and I give people background, I talk about how I left grad school in '91 with 3 strikes against me, right? The arrogance of my youth, the arrogance of my MBA, and the arrogance of having been raised an entrepreneur. So I look back and say, okay, you start off life with those three strikes and you didn't know it. You didn't give a shit about it. I was a bull in every China shop, and every shop I walked into was a China shop. And I did that for 15 years, but I made my way and achieved a level of quote unquote success. And then, my greatest failure was also the greatest turning point in my life. I had co-founded and exited several businesses, and then joined and exited several companies that went IPO. And that doesn't happen to most people once, let alone 4 times, right? Or 5 times. So it was a remarkable 15-year journey. And then I got sick of it. I went back to sales, and the next sales job I took, I was a top rep worldwide out of 300 people, and life was good. And it was the best time, and it was my worst time. And I could never in my life look back and count more achievements, but then feel more worthless or alone. It was really powerful. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And so, when you sell a lot and you become a top performer, they just throw stuff at you like trips and stock options and money, but never what I was looking for. And what I was looking for, was a sense of accomplishment and purpose and so forth. And so, I went and hired a life coach, and I had that coach for 10 years. So at that moment, Chris, I think, and I have people who know me know that I have this concept called the 7 C's of change. And 2 of those C's are the 2 paths that you walk to change, or that you walk to growth. One is the path of curiosity. The other is a path of complacency. And the genesis of this concept came from my own experience, right? I was complacent for those 15 years, believing I knew the way, never asking a question, just full steam ahead. And what I needed was that I had several warnings ahead of time, right? Several messages I ignored, except for that one, which I couldn't ignore. And finally, I became curious. Finally, I hired a life coach. Within 6 months, I knew every CEO and sales leader I'd ever met needed this. And within another 6 months, I decided to start my company, and that was a big transition point. So yeah, so oftentimes for me anyway, the greatest failures that I look back on are also the greatest successes, and the greatest successes are oftentimes the greatest failures.
So true. I mean, that's mine set me up for my greatest failures, which I've shared publicly, in the humiliation, financial loss, and all that. Dude, thanks for sharing again. I mean, even though we all know each other, when you share it, you're sharing it in a different angle. You know, I'm hearing new things in a fresh way. It's awesome, man. Thanks. It's powerful. And I think that's the thing that, you know, Michelle Obama in her book says, I've been at the tables with the smartest people in the world. I'm paraphrasing. They don't know what they're doing either. You know, we get lucky in some things that we do right. We learn through hard trials what works and what doesn't. And we keep exploring and experimenting, you know. And I wouldn't mind a little bit more luck. I'll take it. But the exploring and the experimenting is at least where I can, you know, actively figure out what can be better. Hopping up in front of the diving board in my Speedos. I've had all kinds of interesting images today. When you were talking about your dad introducing you to people because you're smart, the joke can be present. And so it's funny. I pictured like on Forrest Gump where they're talking about the kid as he's walking by. Just kidding.
Stupid is,
Brett,
stupid does.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, wouldn't be funny if you weren't freaking smart. Well, and you know what? In that story, you finished your MBA, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, yeah, you know, you don't show up at all as somebody who has an MBA in all the great ways that I mean by that. I should define it. Because we all share, like, academia. We can use it for credibility. We can use it for bolstering, you know, impact. We can use it for framing something. But if I thought academia was the most impactful place to be, that's where I'd be.
Well,
you know, if I thought nonprofit work was, right, it's too frozen. It's too stuck.
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in Buffalo, and my mom, her heritage is German. My dad's Greek, and so my mom joined the church, joined the family. She moved to Buffalo to join the family, and so we were all raised Greek, and we all had Greek restaurants, and everybody I knew was an entrepreneur. So, and Buffalo is a very provincial, parochial type of environment where, you know, it's a cocoon, you know, just place that changes very slowly. And so I had a life there. And then when I left and went to Boston for grad school, I was a fish out of water. I you know, viscerally, physically experienced the difference between the life I had experienced and this life now in a cosmopolitan city with every nationality represented, with the diversity and the curiosity. And I was this meat and potatoes dude from someplace else. It was interesting. So I got to experience the difference between working hard and, you know, being there and working smart, academia versus doing. And I got that lesson very clearly, very early. And then when I left school, because I had been kind of transformed by the experience, and I had become one of them over that 2-year period. When I came home, everybody looked at me the way you would expect me to be. What are you using these big words for, and all this bullshit, and, you know, what happened to you, that kind of thing. So I got it in reverse. And so I had to make a decision, you know, who I wanted to be. And then when I moved to Columbus from Boston, you know, that was another huge adjustment. So that's kind of what. So I've had to experience business and, you know, communicate with folks in multiple environments, and I've experienced and paid attention to those hard lessons of not communicating well. And thankfully now I just have to learn that once, basically, and I can get over it. But the nice thing now, I would say, Chris, is I can travel in multiple spheres. I can operate in all of them. Whether I like to or not is another question, but I've learned enough to now that I can move around.
That's awesome. I mean, we got to meet people in their boxes,
Right.
and so I can use the academic language or the whatever. Brett, that makes me think about where you are with trying to. You've added these new, awareness points, categories to who you are as a person, so you can speak with any coach at any level or any player at any level, meet them where they are. But now you're also adding this, skill set, not just improving and making it a reality of leading everything with the athletic focus of Championship. You're going into places and speaking new language, right? It's like learning a new way to think. Do you resonate with that? Just curious.
Yeah, just resonated a lot with learning like different communities or different environments and how to thrive in those and bring whatever your uniqueness is, your past experiences and your stories and how it resonates with people in different places. Just writing. Of course, Chris, you and I have worked on, I guess, 5 books together, and then the most recent one was finally for athletes and coaches, which was like my wheelhouse. Grew up in the sports world, been raised in this world, never had a job outside of working in sports my entire life, except for like a 2-week stint on a maintenance crew, which didn't last long. But I've only done the sports world, and that's been my world. So we wrote our most recent book about, applying everything we do with SiteShift and Championship to athletes and coaches. But now seeing people read that book and taking it outside the sports world, and it's resonating with them. And so realizing, okay, this message has, can hit multiple spheres. And so, I don't have to speak to just athletes and coaches, but other people will resonate with those stories and those experiences. And truth is truth, no matter what sphere it's in. But also, really comfortable talking to coaches and athletes and athletic directors. Just, I know that world so much, but now jumping into a world where I'm talking to, HR departments and business leaders and, financial advisors. And it's like, all right, I don't really understand your world, but trying to figure out and have some credibility there and find confidence there as well. So yeah, it's fun to explore new territories, but also fun to get the excitement that what I have, what I know, my experiences apply in different areas as well. I don't have to change a lot of who I am to be successful there.
Yeah. And Chris, I'm thinking about you too in this context, because I was actually I was on the phone yesterday with a group of peers, and somebody came up with a challenge. Right, I have this group of CEOs who are all curious about how to shift their strategy for next year, and the question was, do you know anyone who's really well qualified at helping CEOs imagine new strategies for their business? Right. And I asked, well, what's the key thing that a CEO has to have to imagine new strategies for their business? Do they have to have, a team of people with greater business acumen, or something else? And the answer came up as, it's just, they need to be more curious. They need to be able to step out of their world and be more heroic, more brave. Right. And I immediately thought of you as somebody who could step into a role like that and help these folks kind of like leave behind what they think they know and step into, areas that represent the potential that they can become and that their business could become. So and that's a great example, I think, of how someone with your skill set could step outside of a traditional leadership development role and move into a non-traditional strategy development type situation, or visioning that not just for an individual, but for an entire 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 person organization.
Thanks, man. That brings up a comment. Was there a question? Yeah, that's the bigger thing we'll hit on. So were you connecting a dot? And I have a comment to make or a question.
No, I think connecting the dot. I think the opening for you would be, or the insight that I'd love to learn from you is, what is it that allows someone to have an expertise in leadership, and then allow you to apply that in places where you didn't grow up. I mean, you can't say that you ran a 100,000 person Fortune 1,000 company, yet you can help the CEO of an organization like that reimagine a future for the business, for their customers, and for their employees. How does that happen?
Yeah, thank you. It's encouraging. I mean, and that's the thing about life that's so weird. The places that it makes sense for you to be usually are not the places you're going to be. Not always the case. Not always. But I think it's a little bit what you're saying, Brett, about like, hey, here I am in business and financial managers, and here it is.
Right.
Life will collapse your beliefs in some level, minor or major. And when it does, what do? You get more rigid. You lose the ability to construct the new box really quick and how to figure out that box. And for me, I just am so zeroed in, obsessively, passionately excited about how to actively collapse my beliefs internally before circumstances do it. Because if I take myself through that, then what it sets me up for is the reimagining, the rebirth. And so, I'm trying in different ways that we serve business leaders to encourage or prod or provoke, like, hey, a lot's going to change in 2021. A lot's changing now. How can you start letting things collapse? Was it the Toyota CEO that was like, so what if that's what Tesla's market share is? They don't have anything what we have, right? It sounds just like Blockbuster talking about Netflix. And regardless of opinions on Elon Musk and his ability to drive market share and the price of his stock, which that's a skill set, you can see that without a reimagining, a slow death is already there. Well, Toyota has the institution to die a slow death for 40 or 50 years. Most people in business leadership don't have that kind of ability. They've got to be able to go, I need to go ahead and have that funeral now. And so I think, for me, it's just the way that showed up as an interest where personal transformation and leadership and then growth specifically applied in a business context in this setting have overlapped like since I was in the 9th grade. That's like, I actively can remember being in all three of those spheres. And I think it says a lot to like, how much what we're doing can help people, and the world needs it more than ever because there's going to be more hurt coming. And I wish that weren't true. And I'm not doomsday-ish. It's just prepping for what's there. Not prepping in the sense of, 50,000 cans of beans and a million units of ammo. Although maybe I have all that. I was a little bit annoyed when everything started being crazy in March, and I was like, oh my gosh, have I been wrong about this way of living? Should I have adopted a new lifestyle?
Oh man. And that's the thing. You're never going to know if you're right or wrong until it happens.
You find out you're wrong.
I love it. Well, look, Matt, I think we've come to an end of another awesome conversation. For those of you who are just joining us, this is Breaking Brains and Building Hearts. And I think what's interesting today is we had a great conversation, I think, we ended up talking about the benefits of a diverse experience in life. And Chris, you talked about how you consciously today break and build your own reality in advance of it being done for you. And that's a great way to consciously create diversity of your experience. And at the end of the day, that diversity is what's allowed the three of us to, experience greater potential. Like we build something and all of a sudden we find new opportunities because we have past experiences, those diverse experiences to pull from. So if for nothing else, for those listening, maybe taking that small step outside of a comfort zone not only will give you value in the moment, but will continue to pay dividends over a life and a career of making those kinds of decisions and exploring different opportunities. And that may actually open up doors that you never imagined being open.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Great.
Cool. Thank you, guys. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
BBBH.